The sun was setting over the dusty town of Cedar Ridge when 17-year-old Emma Mae Fletcher first laid eyes on the boy who would change her life forever. She was sweeping the porch of Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, where she earned her keep doing chores and tending to guests. When she heard the cruel laughter echoing from the alley behind the general store, Emma Mae had learned long ago that where there was cruel laughter, there was usually someone in need of help. Her own childhood had been filled with mockery from the other children in town, mockery about her patched dresses, her worn-out shoes, and most of all about having no family to call her own. The orphan train had brought her to Cedar Ridge when she was just 8 years old. Mrs. Henderson had taken her in more out of necessity than kindness. Setting down her broom, Emma Mae crept toward the sound. What she saw made her heart clench with familiar pain. 3 boys from town, the banker's son, the sheriff's nephew, and the blacksmith's boy, had cornered a Native American boy about her own age. They had knocked him to the ground, and his satchel lay scattered in the dirt, its contents spilled everywhere. "Go back where you came from, savage," spat Tommy Morrison, the banker's son. "Your kind ain't welcome in civilized places." The native boy, tall and lean with kind, dark eyes, said nothing. He simply tried to gather his belongings. While the 3 tormentors kicked dirt at him and pushed him back down every time he tried to stand, Emma Mae had seen enough. Before she could think twice about the consequences, she marched into that alley like an avenging angel. "You leave him alone," she shouted, her voice carrying more authority than her small frame suggested it could. 3 against 1. It's not fair, and you know it. Tommy Morrison turned to face her, his lips curling into a sneer. "Well, if it isn't the orphan girl, this ain't your business, Emma Mae. Go back to your scrubbing." "Any decent person's business is standing up for what's right," Emma Mae shot back. She stepped between the native boy and his tormentors, her chin raised defiantly. "And picking on someone just because he's different ain't right." The blacksmith's boy, Pete, laughed harshly. "You defending your own kind now? Outcasts gotta stick together, I guess." Those words cut deep, but Emma Mae didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. "At least I know the difference between right and wrong. Now get out of here before I tell your fathers what kind of men you're growing up to be." For a moment it looked like the 3 boys might escalate the situation. But something in Emma Mae's unwavering gaze, the same steel that had helped her survive years of loneliness and hardship, made them think twice, with muttered curses and promises that this wasn't over. They slunk away into the gathering dusk. Emma Mae immediately knelt beside the native boy, helping him gather his scattered belongings. Up close, she could see a cut on his lip and bruising on his cheekbone. "Are you hurt bad?" she asked gently, her anger melting into concern. He looked at her with surprise, as if kindness from a white person was the last thing he'd expected. I am fine," he said carefully, his English accented but clear. "Thank you. You did not have to." "Yes, I did," Emma Mae interrupted firmly. "It was the right thing to do." She handed him his satchel, now refilled with what looked like herbs and small carved items. "I'm Emma Mae Fletcher." "I am called Running Wolf," he replied, getting to his feet and offering her his hand to help her up. "But the white men in town call me Thomas." "Which do you prefer?" Emma Mae asked. A small smile crossed his face, the first she'd seen from him. "Running Wolf is the name my grandmother gave me. It is who I am. Then Running Wolf it is," Emma Mae said with a smile of her own. That simple exchange, that moment of seeing and accepting each other, truly was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. Over the following weeks, Running Wolf began visiting the boarding house. At first, he came seeking Emma Mae's help with reading English, letters and documents that affected his people's dealings with the territorial government. Emma Mae, who had taught herself to read from the few books in Mrs. Henderson's parlor, was happy to help, but soon their meetings became about much more than letters and documents. Running Wolf would arrive in the early evening, when Emma Mae's chores were finished, and they would sit on the back porch talking until the stars came out. He told her about his life with the Lakota band that camped in the hills outside town, about his grandmother who had raised him after his parents died in a cavalry raid, about the old ways that were disappearing, about his dreams of finding a path between two worlds. Emma May shared her own stories about the orphan train, about the parents she couldn't remember, about the loneliness that sometimes felt like a physical ache inside her chest. She told him about her dreams, too, of someday having a real family, a place where she truly belonged. "You belong wherever your heart is at peace," Running Wolf told her one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Mine is at peace when I am with you." Emma May felt her cheeks flush warm. Running Wolf. "I know it is not simple," he said quietly. "I know what your people think of mine, and what mine think of yours. But the heart does not see color, Emma May. It sees only truth." Wanted to tell him that her heart saw the truth, too, that she had never felt as understood, as valued as she did when she was with him. But the words stuck in her throat, held back by the weight of all the reasons why such feelings were impossible. Their secret friendship continued through the summer and into the fall. Emma May found herself living for those evening conversations, for the way Running Wolf listened to her thoughts and dreams as if they mattered, for the gentle way he spoke about the world and their place in it. But secrets in small towns have a way of coming to light. It was Mrs. Henderson who discovered them first. Coming around the corner of the house one evening to find Emma May and Running Wolf sitting close together on the back steps, sharing a simple meal Emma May had prepared. From kitchen scraps, Emma May Fletcher. Mrs. Henderson's voice cracked like a whip across the peaceful evening. "What is the meaning of this?" Emma May jumped to her feet, her heart hammering. "Mrs. Henderson, I can explain." The older woman's face was flushed with anger and something that looked like fear. "Explain why you're consorting with a savage? Explain why you're bringing shame on my establishment." "He's not a savage," Emma May said firmly, though her voice shook. "He's my friend." Friend. Mrs. Henderson's laugh was bitter. "You have no idea what you're playing with. Do you know what happens to white girls who get too friendly with Indians? Do you know what this could mean for both of you?" Wolf stood slowly, his dignity intact despite the woman's harsh words. "I mean Miss Emma May no harm," he said quietly. You'll never have the chance," Mrs. Henderson cut him off. "You'll not set foot on my property again, boy." And Emma May, she turned her blazing eyes on the girl who had become like a daughter to her, despite her stern ways. "You'll not speak to him again? Not if you want to keep your place here." Emma May felt the blood drain from her face. Mrs. Henderson's boarding house was the only home she'd ever known. Without it, she would be truly alone in the world. But looking at Running Wolf's proud, hurt face, she felt something break inside her chest. "I won't promise that," she whispered. "Then you'll pack your things and be gone by morning," Mrs. Henderson said coldly. "I won't have it said that I harbor a girl who consorts with Indians. Not in this town." The next morning, Emma May stood on the front porch of the only home she'd ever known, her few possessions bundled in a worn carpet bag. Mrs. Henderson had relented, slightly enough to give her a week's wages and the address of a woman in the next county who might need domestic help. But as Emma May walked down the dusty main street of Cedar Ridge, she knew she wasn't leaving to find work elsewhere. She was going to find Running Wolf. She found him camped by a small stream about 5 miles outside town, as if he'd been waiting for her. "I heard what happened," he said simply, rising from beside his small fire. Mrs. Henderson sent word too. "The reservation agent, the whole town knows." Emma May set down her bag and looked at him. In the morning light, she could see the pain in his dark eyes, the resignation that sat heavy on his shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry that knowing me has brought you trouble." "Are you sorry that you know me?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them like a challenge and a prayer rolled into one. "No," Emma May said, and the word came out stronger than she'd expected. "I'm not sorry at all. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Running Wolf. You're the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered." Something shifted in his expression, hope replacing resignation. "Then come with me." "What?" "Come with me to my grandmother's camp. She is wise, and she will know what to do. Maybe there is a way." Emma May's heart leaped, but doubt crept in just as quickly. "Your people won't accept me any more than mine accept you. My grandmother judges people by their hearts, not their skin," Running Wolf said. She will see what I see in you: strength, kindness, courage. She will see that you defended me when no one else would. The journey to the Lakota camp took 2 days. Emma May had never been so far from civilization, had never seen landscapes so wild and beautiful. Running Wolf was patient with her inexperience, teaching her how to read the signs of the trail, how to find clean water, how to move quietly through the wilderness. On the second night, they sat beside their small campfire under a canopy of stars, more brilliant than any Emma May had ever seen. Running Wolf reached for her hand. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "I want you to know that these days with you have been the happiest of my life." Emma May squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses earned through hard work, the strength that had never been used against her in anger. "Mine too," she whispered. They were simple words, but they carried the weight of a promise, a commitment to whatever lay ahead. The Lakota camp appeared in a valley the next afternoon like something from a dream. Dozens of teepees were arranged, in a great circle, with smoke rising from cooking fires and the sound of children playing drifting on the wind. Emma May had never seen anything so beautiful or so foreign. The reaction to their arrival was immediate and intense. Warriors stepped forward, their faces hard with suspicion. Women gathered children behind them, their eyes wary. An elderly man with steel-gray hair and deep lines carved by sun and wind approached them with measured steps. This was Chief Standing Bear, Running Wolf's uncle and the leader of their band. The conversation that followed was in Lakota, too rapid and complex for Emma May to follow. She could read the tension in the gathered crowd, could see the fear and anger in many faces. She understood that her presence here was seen as a threat, a complication that could bring danger to them all. Then an elderly woman emerged. From one of the larger teps, she was small and bent with age, her long gray hair braided with feathers and beads. But her eyes, dark and sharp as a hawk's, missed nothing as they studied Emma May from head to toe. This was Grandmother Spotted Hawk, the medicine woman who had raised Running Wolf. She spoke a few words to her grandson, then approached Emma May directly. For a long moment, two women looked at each other, the young white orphan and the ancient Lakota elder, as if each was taking the measure of the other's soul. Then Grandmother Spotted Hawk reached out and took Emma May's hands in her own, weathered ones. "You are the one who stood between my grandson and his enemies," she said in careful English. "Yes, ma'am," Emma May replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did this knowing it would bring you trouble." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" It was the question Emma May had been asking herself since that day in the alley. Why had she stepped in? Why had she risked everything for a stranger? "Because it was right," she said finally. "Because he needed help, and I could give it." "Grandmother." Spotted Hawk nodded slowly, as if this answer confirmed something she had already suspected. "You have a warrior's heart in a woman's body," she said. "This is rare and precious. You are welcome in our camp." The word sent a murmur through the gathered crowd, some approving, others clearly troubled. But no one argued with the medicine woman's decision. Over the following days, Emma May began to learn what it meant to be part of a Lakota community. The women taught her to prepare food in their traditional ways, to work with buffalo hide, to identify the plants and herbs used for medicine. The children, initially shy, began to warm to her gentle nature and willingness to join their games. And through it all, Running Wolf was beside her, translating when language failed, explaining customs and traditions, helping her find her place in this new world. But even as Emma May began to feel more at home than she ever had before, she could sense the underlying tension in the camp. Whispered conversations would stop when she approached. Worried glances were exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. The truth came out on her 7th night in the camp. Grandmother Spotted Hawk asked Emma May to walk with her to a hill overlooking the valley. As they sat together watching the sunset, the old woman spoke carefully. "There are those in the camp who fear your presence here," she said. "They worry that white soldiers will come looking for you, will use your disappearance as an excuse to attack us." Emma May's heart sank. She had been so focused on finding her own happiness that she hadn't considered the danger she might be bringing to people who had shown her kindness. "I should leave," she said quietly. "Should you?" Grandmother Spotted Hawk asked. Or should you stay and face what comes with courage, as you did that day in the alley? Before Emma May could answer, the sound of horses approaching at speed reached them from the valley below. Both women rose, shading their eyes against the setting sun to see what was coming. It was a war party, but not one returning from battle. These were messengers, their horses lathered with sweat, their faces grim with urgent news. Emma May and Grandmother Spotted Hawk hurried back to camp, where the messengers were already speaking rapidly to Chief Standing Bear. Emma May couldn't understand the words, but she could read the fear and anger spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Running Wolf appeared at her side, his face pale. "What is it?" Emma May asked. "Soldiers are coming," he said quietly. "A full cavalry patrol. They say they're looking for a kidnapped white girl and they're using her disappearance as justification to search every native camp in the territory." Emma May felt the world tilt around her. "They're looking for me, yes. And when they don't find you willingly returned, ... Running Wolf's voice trailed off, but Emma May understood. The soldiers would assume the worst. They would see her presence in the camp as proof of kidnapping, of violence against a white woman. The penalty for such crimes, real or imagined, was swift and brutal. "I have to go back," Emma May said immediately. "I have to turn myself in before they get here." "No." The voice was Grandmother Spotted Hawk, spoken with quiet authority. "You will not sacrifice yourself to appease men who see only what they wish to see. There is another way." "What way?" Emma May asked. The old woman's eyes glittered in the firelight. "Call upon the old laws of protection and justice that run deeper than any government decree." That night, as the camp prepared for what might come, Grandmother Spotted Hawk performed a ceremony that Emma May would remember for the rest of her life. Using paints made from sacred clays and plants, the medicine woman marked Emma May's face with symbols of protection and belonging. "You are no longer just a white girl who wandered into our camp," she said as she worked. "You are under the protection of the Lakota people. You are my granddaughter, as Running Wolf is my grandson. Any who would harm you must first answer to us." Emma May felt tears streaming down her cheeks, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of belonging. For the first time in her life, she was truly part of a family, but even as her heart soared, she knew that the morning would bring a reckoning. The cavalry patrol arrived just after dawn, 30 soldiers in blue uniforms, led by a captain whose hard face spoke of years of frontier conflict. Emma May watched from the entrance of Grandmother Spotted Hawk's teepee as the soldiers formed a line facing the camp. Their weapons ready, Captain Morrison, for it was indeed Tommy Morrison's father, called out in a voice that carried across the valley. "I am Captain James Morrison of the United States Cavalry. We are looking for a white girl named Emma May Fletcher, believed to have been kidnapped by Indians. Produce her immediately, or face the consequences." Chief Standing Bear stepped forward, his bearing dignified despite the weapons pointed at his people. "There is no kidnapped girl here," he said in clear English. "There is only my niece, who came to us seeking protection from those who would harm her." "Niece?" Captain Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me, Chief. We know she's here. Hand her over now, and we'll consider not burning your camp to the ground." It was then that Emma May made her choice, before anyone could stop her. She stepped out of the teepee and walked toward the line of soldiers. But she didn't walk as a victim or a prisoner. She walked as a member of the Lakota people, her chin high, the sacred paint still marking her face. "I'm Emma May Fletcher," she said clearly. "I'm exactly where I choose to be." Captain Morrison's face flushed red. "Miss Fletcher, you've been missing for over a week. These savages have clearly addled your mind. Come with us immediately." Emma May said simply. The single word fell into the morning air like a stone into still water, sending ripples of shock through both groups. "No," Captain Morrison repeated, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "I said no, Captain Morrison. I'm not missing. I'm not kidnapped. I'm home. Home." The captain's voice rose to a shout. "With these heathens? Girl, you don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," Emma May replied.
Ease up.
"People took me in when your civilized town threw me out for the crime of being kind to someone different. They've treated me with more respect and love than I ever received from white folks. Captain Morrison's hand moved to his weapon. Coming with us, Miss Fletcher, by force if necessary. It was then that Running Wolf stepped forward, positioning himself between MMA and the soldiers. She is under our protection, he said quietly. She is family. Family. Captain Morrison laughed harshly. She's a white woman, boy. She doesn't belong with your kind. She belongs where she chooses to belong, Running Wolf replied. And she has chosen us, as we have chosen her. For a moment, MMA thought Captain Morrison might actually order his men to fire. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. But then another voice spoke from behind the line of soldiers. Captain Morrison, the voice, belonged to an older man in civilian clothes who had ridden up during the confrontation. MMA recognized him as Judge Whitman, the territorial judge who occasionally held court in Cedar Ridge. Judge, Captain Morrison said, clearly surprised. What brings you here? Reports of a missing girl? Judge Whitman replied. But from what I can see, Miss Fletcher is neither missing nor in distress. He urged his horse forward, studying MMA with shrewd eyes. Miss Fletcher, are you here against your will? No. Your Honor, MMA said clearly. I am here by my own choice. Have you been harmed or threatened in any way? No, Your Honor. I have been treated with nothing but kindness and respect. Judge Whitman nodded thoughtfully. And you wish to remain here? MMA glanced back at Running Wolf, at Grandmother Spotted Hawk, at the people who had become her. Family, yes, Your Honor? I do? Then that settles the matter, Judge Whitman said firmly. Captain Morrison, Miss Fletcher, is of legal age and clearly of sound mind. She has the right to choose where she lives and with whom she associates. But Judge Captain Morrison protested. But nothing, Captain. We are not in the business of forcing adult white women to live where they do not wish to live, any more than we are in the business of attacking peaceful native camps without just cause. Judge Whitman's voice carried the weight of law and authority. Stand down, your men. Captain Morrison looked as if he might argue further, but the judge's word was final. With obvious reluctance, he ordered his patrol to withdraw, as the soldiers rode away. MMA felt as if she could breathe freely for the first time in days. But even as relief flooded through her, she knew that this confrontation had changed everything. Word would spread throughout the territory about the white girl who had chosen to live with the Lakota. Some would see it as scandal, others as betrayal. But as Running Wolf took her hand, and Grandmother Spotted Hawk placed a weathered palm on her shoulder, MMA realized she didn't care what the outside world thought. She had found her home, her family, her heart's true place. That evening, as the camp celebrated their peaceful resolution of the crisis, Grandmother Spotted Hawk called MMA to her teepee. You showed great courage today, the old woman said. But courage is not enough for what lies ahead. If you truly wish to be one of us, there are things you must learn, traditions you must understand. Over the following months, MMA threw herself into learning the ways of her adopted people. She learned to speak Lakota fluently, to understand the complex relationships between families and clans, to recognize the subtle signs that govern daily life in the camp. But most importantly, she learned about the growing pressures facing the Lakota people. White settlers were pushing further into their traditional lands. The government was pressuring all native tribes to move to reservations. The old ways of life were under constant threat. We are caught between two worlds, Running Wolf told her one evening, as they walked together along the stream where they had first made camp. The old world is dying, but the new world has no place for us. Then we make our own place, MMA said firmly. We find a way to bridge those worlds. Running Wolf stopped walking and turned to face her. In the moonlight, his face was serious, almost solemn. MMA, he said quietly, there is something I must ask you. Something I have wanted to ask since the day you first defended me in that alley. MMA's heart began to beat faster. What? Is it? Running Wolf reached into his shirt and pulled out a small leather pouch. From it, he withdrew a ring knot, made of gold or silver, but carved from a single piece of beautiful turquoise stone. I made this for you, he said, his voice soft but steady. I carved it in the old way, using tools my grandfather taught me to make. It is not rich by white standards, but it carries all the love in my heart." Emma May stared at the ring, her eyes filling with tears. "I know I cannot offer you the life you might have had in the white world," Running Wolf continued. "I cannot give you a house in town or fancy dresses or a place in society, but I can offer you my heart, my loyalty, my protection for all the days of my life. Emma May Fletcher, will you be my wife?" Through her tears, Emma May saw not just the man she loved, but the life they could build together, a life that bridged two worlds, that proved love was stronger than prejudice, that showed healing was possible even in the most divided times. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Running Wolf, yes, I will marry you." The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her handwitch. In every way that mattered, it had been. Their wedding, held according to Lakota tradition, under the autumn sky, was unlike anything Emma May could have imagined. There were no churches or ministers, no fancy dress or formal vows. Instead, there was a circle of family and friends, sacred songs sung in harmony with the wind, and promises made not just to each other, but to the land, the sky, and the generations yet to come. Grandmother Spotted Hawk performed the ceremony, her ancient voice carrying blessings that seemed to come from the earth itself. Emma May wore a dress of soft deer hide decorated with quill work that the women of the camp had made for her. Running Wolf wore the traditional regalia of a Lakota warrior, his long black hair braided with eagle feathers earned through acts of courage as they stood together in the center of the circle. Emma May felt the presence of all the family she had never had, parents and grandparents stretching back through generations, all welcoming her into their embrace. But even as she celebrated her new life, Emma May knew that challenges lay ahead. The outside world would not easily accept their union. The pressures on the Lakota people continued to grow. Change was coming whether they welcomed it or not. The test came sooner than expected, just 3 months after their wedding. Word reached the camp that all native tribes in the territory were being ordered to report to a reservation 200 miles away. Those who refused would be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The announcement split the band. Some, led by younger warriors, wanted to resist, to fight for their right to remain on their ancestral lands. Others, led by the older chiefs, argued for compliance, believing it was the only way to ensure their people's survival. Emma May found herself in a unique position. As a white woman married to a Lakota man, she could serve as a bridge between the two worlds if anyone would listen to her. It was Grandmother Spotted Hawk who suggested the solution. "You must go to the white authorities," she told Emma May. "Not as an Indian's wife, but as a white woman who understands both peoples. Speak for us as no one else can." The idea terrified Emma May. She would have to leave the safety of the camp, venture back into the white world that had rejected her, and somehow convince officials who saw Native Americans as less than human to show mercy and understanding. But when she looked at Running Wolf, at the children playing in the camp, at the elders whose wisdom had guided her to this moment, she knew she had to try. The journey to the territorial capital took a week. Emma May traveled with a small escort of warriors, but when they reached the outskirts of the city, she continued alone. Her appearance a white woman in native dress, speaking with the accent and mannerisms she had learned from her adopted people, caused stares and whispers wherever she went. The territorial governor was a man named Harrison Webb, a career politician, more interested in advancing his own position than in understanding the complex realities of frontier life. When Emma May was finally granted an audience, she could see the disdain in his eyes as he looked at her. "Mrs. Running Wolf, is it?" Governor Webb's voice dripped with distaste. "I understand you have some concerns about the relocation orders." "Yes, Governor," Emma May said, keeping her voice steady despite her nervousness. "I've come to speak. For the Lakota band led by Chief Standing Bear, they are peaceful people who want only to live in harmony with their neighbors." "Harmony?" Governor Webb laughed harshly. "Miss Fletcher Ford, that is still your name. Regardless of whatever heathen ceremony you may have participated in, these people are obstacles to progress. The territory needs their land for settlers, for railroads, for civilization. They are human beings with rights, Emma May replied firmly. They have lived on that land for generations. It is sacred to them. Sacred? The governor's voice rose. Nothing is sacred when it stands in the way of progress. These Indians will go to the reservation, or they will be removed by force. Is final. Emma May felt her heart sink. She had known it would be difficult, but she had hoped that reason and compassion might prevail. Governor Webb, she said quietly, I've lived with these people for nearly a year. I've seen their kindness, their wisdom, their deep love for their children and their land. They are not the savages you believe them to be. They're families, just like yours. Families that stand in the way of civilization, Governor Webb replied coldly. Now, if you're quite finished, I have real business to attend to. Emma May left the governor's office feeling defeated. But as she walked through the streets of the territorial capital, an idea began to form in her mind, a desperate plan that might just work. She had one advantage that she hadn't fully considered: her story. The tale of the orphan girl who had defended a native boy and found her home among his people was romantic, dramatic, the kind of story that captured people's imagination. If she couldn't convince politicians with logic, perhaps she could reach the public with emotion. Emma May spent the next 3 days visiting newspaper offices, telling her story to any reporter who would listen. She spoke about the day she had first met Running Wolf, about the kindness she had found among his people, about the love that had grown between two worlds. Some reporters dismissed her as a curiosity, a white woman who had gone native, but others saw the human interest potential in her story. Within a week, newspapers across the territory were running headlines like "Orphan Girl Finds Love Among the Lakota" and "A Romance That Bridges to Worlds." The public response was immediate and intense. Some readers were outraged, denouncing Emma May as a traitor to her race. But many others were moved by her story, touched by the idea that love could overcome the barriers that divided peoples. Letters poured into newspaper, offices and government buildings. Church groups organized prayer meetings for peaceful resolution. Women's societies sent petitions calling for mercy. Governor Webb, sensing the political wind shifting, agreed to meet with Emma May again. "You've caused quite a stir," he said when she was shown into his office. "The territorial legislature is pressuring me to find a compromise." "What kind of compromise?" Emma May asked. "Your husband's band can remain on a portion of their current lands, 100 acres along the river. In return, they must agree to send their children to government schools and adopt white ways of farming and living." It wasn't everything Emma May had hoped for, but it was far better than forced relocation to a distant reservation. She knew that Chief Standing Bear would have to make the final decision, but at least now there was hope. The ride back to the Lakota camp was the longest week of Emma May's life. When she finally crested the hill overlooking the familiar circle of teepees, she felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Running Wolf met her at the edge of the camp, sweeping her into his arms, as if she had been gone for months instead of weeks. "I was afraid I would never see you again," he whispered against her hair. "Nothing could keep me from coming back to you," she replied. "This is my home. You are my home." That evening, the entire band gathered to hear Emma May's report. She finished explaining the governor's offer. A long silence fell over the circle. Finally, Chief Standing Bear spoke. "This is not the life our grandfathers lived," he said quietly, "but perhaps it is the life our grandchildren can build upon. We will stay." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. There was feasting and dancing, storytelling and singing, but for Emma May, the greatest joy was simply being back in Running Wolf's arms, back among the people who had become her family. As the months passed, the band worked to adapt to their new circumstances. It wasn't easy. The children struggled in the government school, missing their families and their traditional ways. The men had to learn new methods of farming that seemed foreign and inefficient compared to their traditional practices, but they survived. More than that, they began to thrive in their own way. Emma May found herself serving as a bridge between the native community and the growing number of white settlers in the area. Her unique position, a white woman married to a native man trusted by both communities, allowed her to help resolve conflicts before they escalated into violence. She negotiated trading agreements that benefited both peoples. She served as translator and mediator in disputes over land boundaries and water rights. Most importantly, she helped each community see the humanity in the other. 2 years after their wedding, Emma May gave birth to a daughter. They named her Dawn Light, a name that symbolized the new day their love had helped to create. As Emma May held her daughter for the first time, looking into eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of both her parents' peoples, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a lonely orphan girl sweeping someone else's porch to a mother holding her own child, surrounded by family and community and love. She will grow up in both worlds, Running Wolf said softly, stroking their daughter's tiny hand. She will be the bridge we dreamed of building. Emma May smiled, imagining the future stretching out before their little girl, a future where the color of one's skin mattered less than the content of one's character, where love was stronger than prejudice, where different peoples could live together in peace. It wouldn't be easy. There would still be those who opposed any mixing of the races, who saw their marriage and their child as abomination rather than hope. But Emma May had learned something important during her journey from orphan to wife to mother. Love, when it was real and deep and true, could overcome any obstacle. Years later, when Dawnlight had grown into a beautiful young woman who spoke both English and Lakota fluently, who could move easily between the white and native communities, Emma May would look back on that day and